So I have these wax printed sheets that I haven't baked yet, so we need to bake them to seal the wax. So I have my oven that I've preheated to 100 degrees Celsius, which is the temperature that we like to bake at. And you just put your sheets into the oven, and you want to make sure that you're not laying them on top of each other. They need to have their own space to bake evenly. Normally when we have our ovens at around 100, it takes around 6 minutes to bake these fully. And if you bake it too little or too long, then you can have issues with the sealing of the wax, which we'll show you examples of. So I like to start a timer just to make sure I don't forget about these, and I'll leave them for around 6 minutes. And once that's done, I'll take them out and check to make sure they're sealed. Okay, so once you've baked your cards in the oven, you need to take them out and test them. So I have examples of 3 possible scenarios that might happen when you're baking cards. The first is an underbaked card. So this is a card where it wasn't left in the oven long enough, and you can see that you only see a very clear line of wax. It hasn't blurred at all, and you can't see the yellow background coming through. So for this card, what's likely to happen is that the lanes didn't actually seal up. So you can test this using water to see if they've sealed. So what we normally do is just put a drop of water on the card. And as you can see, it's spread out fully. It didn't actually stay in its box. It's a little easier to see with food coloring, so I'll show you that as well. If I place food coloring in there, it also spreads out. So for this card, this wouldn't work because it hasn't sealed. This is a card that's been baked well, so you can see that the wax is blurred a little bit, and you can see the yellow wax background peeking through onto the card. So this one should hopefully hold a seal when I add water to it. So I'm putting a drop of water on. And as you can see, the water is staying in its square and it's sealed well. This is easier to see with a little bit of red food coloring added. So here is a drop of food coloring, and the dye is staying in its square and it's not leaking. So this is a card that you could use. A card that was baked for too long, so it's overbaked, and you can see that the yellow background wax is really showing through and that the lines are basically very blurry now. So what actually happens when you overbake a card is that the surface becomes hydrophobic because the wax has spread out too much. So what this means is that your reagents are likely to bead up on the surface. So as you can see, when I add that drop of water or food coloring, they don't actually penetrate into the paper. So this is a card that you couldn't use because you wouldn't be able to add reagents to it for storage. So overbaking and underbaking can both be issues that you might encounter when you're preparing these devices. So it's important to make sure that you check at least 1 or 2 strips on every page to make sure that they're working well. And if you just use regular water, you can still use the card afterward if it works fine.